Hey everyone, what's up? This is Uri for Gorilla Poker. I want to start out by talking about last week and the events of 7th of October. As many of you know, and for those who don't, I live in Israel and have lived in Israel for most of my life. Honestly, I was not able to record a video last week, and it is questionable what state I am in to record one right now. I think me, as well as a lot of other people living in Israel, are still trying to process what happened on multiple levels. But yeah, for now, put that aside, put reality aside, and try to focus on poker. So, yeah, forgive me, it's not normal times over here. But yeah, let's do a high stakes poker hand. We're gonna look at Matthew versus Marius. I'm not gonna try pronouncing the names because in the hand history I'm reading they're not all the way there and don't want to randomly make a mistake, but these guys are both regs. They're playing heads up 25-50 and raise pre-flop by Marius, call by Matthew. Sizing is within the region of normal for heads up. King Queen 10 two-tone board. First thing you should be thinking is, how does this board interact with both ranges, and does it favor anyone, and what are the strategic implications of that? And generally a useful concept to have in mind here is what I like to call range asymmetry. So the raiser's range and the caller's range have asymmetrical portions to them due to, caller gets to defend a bit wider than the raiser opens, generally, just due to pot odds, but not always. But also he 3-bets, and the 3-betting portion is missing. So generally speaking, high cards tend to favor the raiser and low cards tend to favor the caller, very broadly speaking, and the more high cards the better. And then, two-tone means something and connected means something, etc. But King Queen 10 two-tone very obviously favors the raiser, especially in heads up where, Ace Jack is going to get 3-bet, King Queen's going to get 3-bet, and 10s Queens Kings will get 3-bet. So huge asymmetrical advantage for the raiser, and this means he gets to size bigger and be more aggressive and all this good stuff. It's very automatic for me, but for those of you who don't know, any flop you need to be evaluating these things in order to understand what's going on in a big picture context. So yeah, King Queen 10 two-tone goes check check. Now, why check back? Well, the board is, 3 high cards, very connected, and you have an advantage, but you don't need to use it by betting everything. Sometimes the way to use it is betting big with some of your hands, and then you still have a check back range. Imagine you have a hand like 8s or 9s. Now, there are hands that don't have much incentive to bet. So yeah, check check. Turn 4 of spades doesn't change very much. Given in position, checked back. Now things are more symmetrical because he probably bets flop with most all of his best hands. But yeah, goes check check again. So we arrive to the river where river is a deuce, and both ranges, and this is an uncommon node, so I'm guessing a lot of the people watching the video have no clue what ranges look like. But if you want to kind of think of it, I guess the word is graphically, just imagine that every time someone skips a bet, their range kind of loses some of the top stuff and becomes more medium to low stuff heavy. So after they both miss the flop bet, there are a lot less straights and 2 pairs and kings. And after they miss the turn bet, even less kings and maybe a bit less queens, etc. And the ranges just get weighted down and down and down. But still, everyone has a few traps in theory. We're not going to say in practice, but definitely in theory. So yeah, we get to the river, Matthew checks, and here, he could have 3s, 5s, 6s, any 4, he could check a 10, he could check ace high, then he could check some trash that he gave up. Marius goes for a pot size bet, and here, again, we always ask ourselves, what is the threshold for, what's good enough to bet pot? Certainly a king is good enough. A king is maybe even worth more than pot. Maybe a queen is worth a pot-sized bet. Maybe it needs a certain kicker. I'm not sharp enough heads up to know the threshold exactly. I'd guess it's somewhere around any queen can go for a pot bet, but maybe that's taking it a bit too far. Maybe you need like a queen 7 or a queen 8. But yeah, goes for pot-sized bet, and Matthew springs the trap. So big check raise, almost 9x, like 8 point something x check raise. And he's saying, I have probably 2 pair plus to do this. So a million 2 pair plus combinations if he's willing to check them, to check raise. Of course, you could have deuces and the queen deuce and all sorts of things. But even just stuff that trapped, like maybe you checked king 10 or king 4 and just go for the check raise. And Marius goes for the call with no time bank activated, so not a very tough decision, and we see a showdown. So Matthew has ace 8 for the very intuitive check flop, check turn, check river hand, and decides to pick it for a check raise, which we'll comment on in a second. And Marius has queen deuce, which, very makes sense to check back flop and turn, I think. Could also bet turn sometimes, or bet flop sometimes, but check back makes sense. Definitely bet river, and this hand can't fold to a raise. It's a snap call because I think your opponent can raise a chop. Maybe he has like a 10 deuce suited or a 10-4 or something like that sometimes. So I don't think the hand is really foldable against this size of check raise. Now, if we look at Matthew's hand of ace 8, I feel like this is a bit blundered in the sense of combo choice. And Marius having queen deuce actually illustrates this kind of perfectly, because Marius has a bunch of snap calls versus a check raise on the river, and they're mostly hands like deuces and 4 deuce and 10 deuce and queen deuce, right? 10 deuce suited. But yeah, all the hands that made improved on the deuce. So you should check raise bluff having a deuce for the most part. Like, that's the key card to hold. Not having a deuce, there are some hands that would still be better than ace 8 to do this with. So I'd guess the combo choice is off. It's a small thing, but these small edges can add up. And yeah, let's take a look at the solver and kind of see how my intuitive breakdown holds up. So as always, we are gonna kind of wing the parameters of the solve in a sense that it's not the rake structure, it's not the stack depth. We're putting, just the sizings that were used and not the optimal sizings and all these things. And this is generally fine. Someday I'll start using some program where everything is pre-solved and won't have to do this, but I think this is perfectly fine. You don't get very different results. Certainly not in this context, because we're talking about principles and heads up. So king, queen, 10, two-tone. Like we said, very good board for in-position player. That's why EV out of position wins 19 chips and in position 31. And it's mainly due to the big nut advantage. So I put out a half pot bet. Like you guys can see, queen deuce, certainly a hand that can check back. It can also bet half pot. Why can it bet half pot or check back? Why can it do both? Because it's an appropriate bet size for queen deuce to have half pot go in. It's not too much, so it's a valid hand to do that with. For sevens, it's too much, so you don't have pot sevens or eights, but queen deuce can go either way. But yeah, of course, very natural hand to check back because it's not looking to get in stacks. So check, check. Random 4 on the turn. Here we have the ace 8, very natural, pure checking hand. In position again with a queen deuce, again can bet or check. Similar thought to before, where it's fine to grow the pot a bit more. You can do it on a turn or on the river, both fine. So we check back. And river deuce. I don't think the suits matter as long as it's not a club, but it was not a heart, so we'll put a diamond. And yeah, out of position with ace 8 again has a very clear check. Why a very clear check? Because a hand's going to win a showdown sometimes, and you have plenty of trash to bluff with, so there's no need to dig this deep from a theory standpoint, so we check. And now in position, I let him go pot or shove. It goes only pot, shoves overdoing it, of course. And I was asking, like, how wide can you go for a pot? And I said, maybe any queen. And Solver is actually saying, you can go any queen for sure, but you can also go 10 jack, 10 9, and kind of mix weak kicker 10s, which is, wider than I would have gone. I would not have potted 10 9, but mixed, so wouldn't be making an EV mistake in this context. And yeah, we go pot, now out of position, check raises. I gave him a few sizes. The shove is the main used one. There's a 4x and a 9x, which is similar to what was used in the actual hand. And if we look at the check raise choices, kind of naturally they're going to gravitate to having a deuce for the reason I described. And if you're not going to have a deuce and you want some blocker, at least have a pair like a 4. It's kind of basic theory stuff. How to pick your river check raise hands and heads up. Ace 8 should not be check raising, it can check call. Ace deuce should be check raising. Right? Ace 4 can be check raising. Ace 8 no check raising. Hopefully this makes sense. Small EV mistake. Maybe the guy did it for an exploitative reason, or maybe he doesn't understand how these things work and he's just randomizing. Which a lot of guys will do. They'll be like, oh, I should randomize some percent check raising here. Let's take hands and randomize with it without knowing like there is an actual difference between the hands. So yeah, that's this hand. Hope that was useful for you guys. Other than that, not much to say. Like I said, not ordinary times. We'll try to keep this channel poker focused as much as I can. Anyone who wants to talk about the situation is welcome to talk to me on Twitter or any platform you guys want, and happy to discuss things with people. And yeah, see you guys next time, I hope.